Timcast IRL will be live in Miami with Patrick Bet David, Donald Trump Jr., Matt Gaetz, and Luke Rudkowski. Join us there. Get your tickets by clicking the link in the description below or by going to timcast.com. I want to clarify the definition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. God to me is the literal definition of God, a higher powerful being beyond us and our capabilities, the creator of all things. They don't have that.
They have something that they serve.
But they don't. They do not have that concept in their minds of a higher power. It does not exist.
They're worshiping.
But it's not the same thing. There is a +1 and -1. These people are either blind and ignorant and will just be party to the collective unwittingly and useful idiots, or they believe they are simply but a wet robot and there is no truth but power, so they will wield it however they see fit. You ask these people, for the most part, they will tell you there's no God and nothing matters. And then you have many people who might say they believe in God, but are ignorant and the banality of evil. They are the commonplace, ignorant person who does not want to know, does not care to know, but will gladly march behind whatever they think is safe.
That might be the case, but they have a hierarchy, as Jordan Peterson would say, a hierarchy of values. Something has to be at the top. That something is going to be served. That something is going to have other subordinate values.
But there isn't one.
But there is.
What is it?
Well, it depends, right? Is it Gaia? Is it the earth? Is it the earth that needs your sacrifices? Because otherwise we're going to burn it to death, and therefore we need to go to zero emissions, and then all of the poor people across the globe need to die because we are serving Gaia.
But now you're talking about an infinite group of infinite different groups of people.
Yes, everybody has something that they are worshiping and serving, and I think that for a lot of people it's sexual freedom, and I have the right to do whatever I want regardless of who it hurts. I mean, if sex, your feelings, your identity, your decisions, if that's God, well, then we see children end up being the sacrifice for that. Something you're going to serve something. Everybody's serving something, and even the people that are just going along. Why are they going along? Because you're made to be part of a community, and that also is what religion does for you. Right? It gives you a fellowship. It gives you community. It gives you identity. And so these people are finding a God to worship. It's just destructive, and it often involves human sacrifice.
I just again want to clarify the definition. There is a God, and they are lacking one. So you can say that they have vestiges or tenets, but they do not have God.
They have a lowercase g. God. Right.
They have a frame. It's not even fair to say that they have a framework. They have a chaotic mass. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. There's no cohesion to the ideology. They've bounced around from pro-war to anti-war. They at first it was critical race theory, then critical gender theory. There is nothing you can pin their ideology to, because there is not one. Yeah. I've had this argument with people like James Lindsay, They are not Marxists. They will support capitalism if capitalism is part of part of their tribal nature. Mm-hmm. There's no logic or moral framework to anything they do, and I think it's probably because they are godless.
So their God is their self. That's it, right? And if your God is yourself, that means you get to bend and you get to change, right? That's it. And this is the ultimate original sin. And I mean, I'm talking to you as if my husband's a pastor. Right. I carry my Bible's right here. I read it with everybody that I'm with. So I love God. I know God, but I also know the substitute, which is very, very often. And what the enemy will try to sell you is you are your own God. And that is why you can bend. And
this is my point is they don't like themselves. And there is no nucleus to which they have adhered to.
Yes.
So in order for there to be a God that they worship, there would need to be a centralized structure, which there is not.
That is why people that worship self are, as Hannah was saying before the show, more likely to be depressed. The ones that are being sucked into, all of the different maladies, the social maladies.
Yeah, I think there is a culture within the United States, and I think globally too, that says, ultimately your own needs and your own desires are what should govern your whole life. Mm-hmm. And if you are completely absorbing, there are narcissists who have very low self-esteem, right? So they hate themselves, but they also are completely obsessed with their worldview and they cannot be proven wrong about anything. They have all the traits of classic narcissism, but also you wouldn't know it because they're covert narcissists. They seem like they are a defeatist in some way. And I think it's true that there are so many people who are lacking direction or meaning in their life that they either turn inwards and become obsessed with their own being and validating their own feelings, or they look to be the defenders of something. And so you'll get people who say, well, I'm here advocating for people who can't advocate themselves. I'm here defending, people who are gender fluid, and I've got to be an ally in this, that, and the other. They are looking to represent something because they are so lost in and of themselves.
Well, that's part of what it means to be human, is you are called to something greater. And if you're not serving the greatest thing, you will find something lesser to serve.
I thought that was a good question you asked about the video game trope. Why is it so hard for someone to be evil? I wonder if we should actually do an experiment with that. Actually test people and try and figure out.
Oh yeah, especially as video games are more realistic. When you're in a first-person game and you can actually feel the knife going into the thing, and you can hear the scream.
How do you feel a knife?
Haptic feedback gloves that will vibrate and create pressure when you do things in the VR. Haptic feedback vests.
There's also controllers.
Technology's so fun.
The controllers have pressure resistance now. So when you are like pushing a door open in a video game, and this is much more rudimentary.
Are you in an entire suit?
No. You could be. Yeah. Oh. So we actually have the full VR thing downstairs not set up yet, where you can actually stand and run in place. But in some video games, there'll be like a door. The door's closed. To open it, you have to hold down R2, which is the back trigger button on the controller, and it actually resists your push. Whereas normally it just presses very easily. The controller can actually create resistance to make you have to put more strength into it. So with haptics, I don't know about putting a knife into something, but it can squeeze your hand and vibrate and create sensation.
Yeah.
But nobody, that's not common.
No, right. It's going to become more common, these action games where it's so realistic that it's going to feel and seem like you're killing something for real. Like the pig will be screaming and blood will be coming, and you'll be like having to that will create psychopathy in human if that's how they train their gaming, they're killing stuff for real. Like that's not.
I read a thread on Reddit the other day from someone who made a villain character in Baldur's Gate, and it was a really cool looking character, like glowing red eyes and like a crazy face paint, and they're like, I got halfway through, and like every time I'm faced with these challenges, it's like I'm just doing things I really, really don't like and don't want to play the game. Mm-hmm. Like I can't do it, but the game is created as such that you can do the villain stuff or do the good guy stuff or be the rogue or whatever. And there are people like, I just can't bring myself to do it. I would love to do a test where you sit people down and give them like a scene from one of these games, easily scripted with, Oblivion, Skyrim or something, or even Baldur's Gate. And then actually ask people their background, their age, their income, their education level, all of that stuff, their voting patterns. I would love to see voting patterns. Yeah. Maybe we should do this.
What do you think you would see? I'm curious.
I think you'd find Democrats overwhelmingly being okay with, I think you would see, there would be a tendency among people who say they vote Democrat with being okay with a bad thing happening in the game to varying degrees.
Why do you think that is?
Based on the political world that we see right now. When I ask someone, why is Joe Biggs going to prison for 2 decades? And they literally say, I don't care. And I'm like, a human being is being imprisoned by an oppressive state to destroy his life. For what? And they're like, so what? Like, that's evil. That's literally, that is evil.
Is it a form of nihilism?
No, it's evil.
When I think of nihilism, I just think of it doesn't matter. But if they're like, it doesn't matter that Joe Biggs got 22 years, like, is that another aspect of nihilism?
Yeah, it matters, right? It's utilitarian thinking versus deontological thinking. And utilitarianism, in my view, has a tendency towards evil. There are certain circumstances where you can say, we're faced with a difficult decision and we are going to try and maximize life saving. It's not much you can do. You've got 2 school buses about to go over the edge of a cliff. One's got 10 kids in it. One's got 3 kids. Man, you got to go for the bus with the 10 kids in it, save as many people as you want. You can't make decisions on the individuals of the other bus. And this lends itself to the trolley problem. But to go back to Joe Biggs individually, it's deontological morality. You cannot take immoral actions against an individual. It matters more than anything that when it comes to Enrique, when it comes to Joe Biggs and the other Proud Boys that have been overly sentenced and the other J6ers, it matters the world that each of these individuals receive proper justice, and the sentences they got are completely improper. Right. Mm-hmm. The fact that we see Democrats celebrating the torture and unjust rulings shows me the evil rests more so, not absolutely. So if we were to create a video game scenario where your character sees a man holding a cat, and then the guy instructs you to kill the cat, I'd be willing to bet that it would skew to a certain degree, probably a small degree, that Democrats are like, so what, do it. And Republicans would be more likely,
It's a
no,
lot of
I
cat
can't.
Do you think
ladies
that they
that vote
would?
Democrat.
Yeah. Do you think that it would be different if it was? I mean, because like I don't know, the people that lean left in my life, they don't have kids; they have pets. So I think that they might have a hard time killing the cat.
They'd be like, oh, it's a video game. Who cares?
I wonder if that's
Right?
the
They'd be
nihilists.
dissociated from like, and they'd say, who cares? It doesn't matter.
If it's less about political affiliation, more about nihilism versus having hope, because some not having kids is like, well, what is there to live for really? What's the purpose? And everyone says, let's having kids.
How about this? We get 1,000 conservatives, 1,000 libertarians, 1,000 liberals, 1,000 independents, and then to what degree we can get communists, socialists, fascists, whatever, and you make maybe 300 of each encounter a different scenario. A Republican is shown a video game scenario where a Democrat is holding a Republican by on his knees with a weapon and instructs you to commit an act against them. In the video game, it's just a video game. It's not real life. You're fine. Then 300 Republicans are presented a scenario where it's the Democrat on the ground, then where it's an independent on the ground, and then you see, are they more or less willing to commit? Are these groups based on the political affiliation of the characters in the game?
Be interesting. I think this is a great research institute to start for Timcast University. Didn't we watch that a couple weeks ago?
Imagine a scenario in a video game where, and I quite literally mean a video game like Skyrim, and you have the villain, let's say he's a demon, quite literally a demonic figure with big red wings, and there's a man on his knees wearing a MAGA hat, and it's like he's wearing knight armor and he has a sword, but he's wearing a Trump hat. Would the Democrat voter be inclined to serve the devil master in the game?
I was going to say, it's sad to think that someone would be more likely to attack someone or let someone suffer based on their clothing. But then I was thinking about military uniforms, and I mean, that's the whole purpose of uniforms. Is who to make suffer and who not to.
And there were, I think in 1 year alone, there were 800 instances where Trump supporters were physically attacked on the streets at random.
Like, at what point does civilian clothing become a military insignia, a militant symbol? The MAGA. I don't think of it as a militant symbol.
I think there was this study that Teen Vogue, I think, commissioned. They published about it this week, saying that the overwhelming majority of men and women, they asked them about their red flags and green flags in dating. It's so fascinating.
You wrote about this.
I did write about this.
I read it before.
I'm going to talk about my own
nicely
work.
done.
Thank you so much. So what I find interesting about this is because it was largely framed off of political stuff. So the overwhelming majority of both men and women said if someone identified as a MAGA Republican, that would be a red flag.
But men said communists.
Men were more likely to lean towards communists. Still, 55% of women also said it would be a red flag or communist. But fewer men thought someone identifying as a liberal was a red flag than the men that thought someone who believes in astrology was a red flag. I mean, there are limits to the political affiliations, and I think there are, I'm just saying, wait, hold on, I want to say, to your point, it is interesting to me that they were willing to forgive liberals more than they were willing to forgive MAGA conservatives. The way people perceive your political affiliation does, I think, impact how they view you.
These were red flags. It didn't say they would not date. It did not say they had disdain. It said it was a red flag. That's it. And I don't care who the guy is. If there is a beautiful woman and she's got a communist flag pin.
Oh, yeah, he knows he can change her political affiliation.
No, he doesn't care about changing her
but
political
deep down,
affiliation.
he knows he can change
He's
it.
just like, yeah. The woman may see the guy with the MAGA symbol and be like, I can change him.
For sure.
But more importantly, anyone, I got to be completely honest, guys, especially Trump supporters out there. Yo, if I'm not in the dating market, but I just have to say, if I met a woman and her whole identity was like, I'm a MAGA Republican, I'd be like, that's kind of weird.
Anybody that I...
It should be super weird.
Yeah.
Even if you're a Trump supporter, just being like that would be like, oh.
And it works the other way too. More women were more likely to think it was a green flag if you said Black Lives Matter, right? But why? Why does that matter in who you're dating? Well, because they're looking for political compliance in a way that they find to be acceptable. Women were more likely to they would value talking about politics more than men did. Men actually didn't care about how often you talk about, the majority of men don't care about how frequently you talk about politics. Men were more likely to think it was a red flag or a green flag if women drank cow's milk over any kind of non-dairy milk.
Yeah.
Women were not thinking about this at all, but people are especially based on gender, they're evaluating your political and cultural behaviors in these sort of small ways, and it gives you an insight into what you're doing. So I think this study on video games is actually really fascinating. I think it could be interesting to see if people were more willing to hurt people based on political ideology, even if it is in a video game. If they're and you'd have to find a way to like test out.
Okay,
if they were willing to
I have
hurt
to
people in video
interject.
games at all.
I'm so curious, and hopefully you guys. Well, you probably have already seen it, but let me ask you each. How often do you guys think about the Roman Empire?
Fairly often.
How many times? I mean, per week, per day? Where are you at?
3 times a week minimum.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, just probably. I mean, we talk about it on the show.
And I see clips of it and stuff, which remind me. So I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, it
plus-
does. Like, how many
plus,
times does it come to mind? Is my question.
The Chosen keeps popping up on my TV randomly.
Sometimes I'll watch like
So
a
it's like
2-hour
it's
documentary.
literally all the time.
Okay.
If I watch something for 2 hours straight, does it just count as thinking of it once? Because I think about it for 2 hours constantly.
So have you seen this? The TikTok where the woman is like, "Oh my gosh, my husband thinks about the Roman Empire like once a day."
Yeah.
And I mean, like, then I saw
never
all these
think
other
about it.
women.
Oh, I was thinking about the
really?
Roman Empire earlier, actually. So maybe it's more than 3 times a week.
Yeah.
I was watching a show earlier, and it this is not me choosing to think about it, but The Chosen came on,
Sure.
and there's Roman
I
soldiers.
picture
there's-
the Northern
there's,
Italy
There's
map.
that joke that at a certain age, men have to decide if they're going to get really into grilling or World War II history.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
so good.
There are things
Civil
that
War.
men. That was not a question. I was never.
No. It's not even I texted my husband. I'm like, "Do you ever think about the Roman Empire? How often?" He's like, "Oh, about once a day."
Yeah, my dad and older brother referenced the Roman Empire my entire life growing up. I felt like
crazy?
number one, I was not that interested in it, but
Men are from Mars,
think
women are
about
from
it
Venus,
all the
man.
time. Yes,
This is correct.
Vespasian.
Yeah.
This is correct.
Women are shocked to find this out. So as much as many women don't like Fresh and Fit, are you familiar with Fresh and Fit?
I listened to your Culture War episode with my 16-year-old on a road trip, so we have
Wow.
lots of.
lots to talk about.
Yeah, that's how we parent.
But
We listen to it and we discuss.
They mentioned
cool.
women don't have hobbies, and it's a shocking thing to men to discover. And I was
That
like,
was in your little.
This is something
Yeah.
Teen Vogue asked about
Right.
too.
so they said that when they bring women on their show, and they say it's average women, but I really do think it's Miami local women, so they're choosing from a select batch. But they say when they ask women like, "What do you do for fun?" They go, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "What do you do for fun? Like, what do you do?" And they're like, I don't know. Like, I hang out with my friends." And it's like, "Yeah, but like doing what? Like, we go out. Like, but what? Go out? What does that mean? Where do you go?" And like, "What do you mean? What do we do? We just go out? What are you talking about?" Like, the women are confused by the question.
Well, so
And-
men and women are different. Okay.
Right.
And this is the difference. Women form relationships face to face. Men form relationships side by side. So it really is it's a different thing.
Oh, yeah.
Men form bonds doing things together like going to war and playing on sports and building a shed. Women don't need to do that. Hannah and I sat down beforehand. We're like, "Just tell me about your life."
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well,
where did you go? That's-
You referenced Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. When John Gray wrote that, one of my favorite things that I read in it, by the way, my dad kept recommending that to me because he was like, "You just need to know that they're not the same thing." But one of my favorite observations that Gray had was that men go to lunch to talk about something. They go to
Yes.
lunch to be like, "We've got an issue. We got to talk about this. We're going to make a business deal." And women will go to lunch to gather information, right?
Yeah.
It's a reason that like I have multiple female friends. I can be on the phone multiple times a week for 4 hours because there's just stuff to talk about, man.
Yeah, but it's people versus things.
It's very different.
Subject
They
versus
serve-
This
object.
is true. This is right.
Chemical bonding has these elements too, like ionic bonding, where you guys would be interacting, sharing an electron, bouncing it back and forth, or a covalent bond where you're sharing it together. Then there's metallic bonding, where all the electrons are headed in one direction and we're all protons witnessing it. That's like the male communication tactic, is a metallic type of bond where we're all focused on,
Simply
something
put,
together.
It's object versus subject. So
Yes.
the meme is that when women take pictures of objects, it's a picture of themselves next to the object. Men will take a picture of the object. So this popped up on Reddit because a guy would be like, "Hey, just got a new video game," and it's a picture of the game. And women would be like, "Look at the game I got," and it's them going like this, holding it.
Is it better to say, instead of that men communicate metallically, women do it ionically, or however you were saying earlier, is it better to say that the masculine form
It's
of
just too esoteric.
Yeah, the masculine form of communication is focusing on a thing, the feminine, because it's not always women that do the feminine behavior. Sometimes men are feminine and women are masculine, or we each embody both.
Yeah.
So, because I do enjoy the cross communication you were
Right,
saying women
right.
generally do. I do it a lot more than normal guys.
Sure.
Let me just give you a Family Guy reference. When Peter goes to a clinic to get like medical tests on him to make money or something. I can't remember the exact reason. And they're like, "We're going to give you the squirrel gene." And then he turns into a squirrel. And they're like, "We're going to give you the Seth Rogen gene that makes you seemingly funny, even though you're not saying anything that's funny." And then finally they give him the gay gene. So Peter becomes gay And then I think he calls Quagmire or Joe or something, and he's like, "What you doing?" And they're like, "What do you mean? You called me?" And he's like, "What you thinking about?" "What? What are you calling me for?"
Yeah.
Like for guys, it's just like, "What? Why are you asking me these questions?"
The one I see on Instagram all the time is girls, like husbands pretending to call wives like the way they want them to, and it's just like, "Hey, I was just on my lunch break. Like, what are you doing? Did you get your nails done? Oh my gosh, did you ask Andrea about whatever?" And it's the same. The opposite is girls will like. It's infuriating to women that if you have like a boyfriend who goes on, to golf with all of his friends, and then you're like, "Oh, how was it?" And they're like, "It's great." Yeah, how's Joe doing with Andrea? I heard that they were going through some rough times. He's like, "I don't know." "Oh, they broke up." I'm like, "What? When?" "I don't know." They have no details for you. This is what women live for. But it's because we serve different purposes in society. So our communication obviously is different. We're hardwired to seek out different information. That's why it's good to have both people on the team, right? You want people having different conversations.
Or mom and a dad when you're a kid.
Oh, Tim, you get 1,000 them before us points. Good job.
But
does he get a certificate too of that? How do we credit these points?
Oh, I just keep track.
Okay, that's nice.
Okay, that's great. It's like Hogwarts.
Yeah.
The house cup.
You don't need to understand.
Oh, okay.
Is your honorary degrees?
Yeah. No, I'll give you whatever you need. You just keep cranking out the
I want
good
the
content.
house cup.
Wisdom.
And I beat Ian.
But I think it is.
I win.
We have Timcast University has a house cup. It's very complicated. You'll have to hear about it in our research institute.
Okay.
But I do think that there is something really valuable to acknowledging that men and women's communication is different, but that doesn't have to be bad. It just is one of the reasons that
correct.
I think monogamy is great, because you only have to figure one woman or one man out, right? You don't have to figure all of them out and get good at communicating with them and learn to change your communication in a way that isn't emotionally satisfactory. You just have to figure out one person.
And there's these general distinctions that are generally true, and then every husband and wife is going to break the mold in some way. So like I am very low emotion, and it's actually really sabotaged my husband in a lot of ways, because he's a pastor, and that's a high shepherding, high counseling, and he's very, very good at it. But, I'm like, "Honey, just give me the information. What do you need? Just get right to it. I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to be here for another 5 minutes. We can have this conversation. I'm going to continue roasting these Brussels sprouts. Okay. But I just need you to just get this to me really fast." And then he'll go to work or go to church, or he'll talk to somebody and he'll go, "Why did you choose this color for the bulletin?" And the woman would be like, "Ah." And so it's like, I'm so kind of low emotional needs. And generally women are not, they need a little more hand holding. They need a little more like building up. And so he has had to unlearn some of what I've taught him. But yeah, like we don't fit into a mold. There are personality differences, but there are also generalities that tend to hold true.
Well, women are communists and men are capitalists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Tendencies, right? So if you look at the voting patterns, I'm being hyperbolic to a certain degree. When you look at voting patterns, women overwhelmingly vote Democrat. If you look at a map of the United States, if only women voted, it's every state's blue except for one.
But isn't that single women?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you look at only male voters, it's every state is red but one. The question about women voting Republican is, are women who vote Republican more likely to get married, or are women who get married later more likely to vote Republican?
Right. So we know that there's a correlation. We don't know if it's conservative women who have more children, because really it's not marriage, it's child rearing, right? Women that have more children tend to be conservative. Or does having more children make you conservative? And I understand the kind of communist socialist thing, because the only place that socialism really is effective and natural is in the family, right? That really
small
is
scale, personal, and five people.
Like unconditional commitment. You do what you can. Those that have less still have their needs met, all of that kind of thing. That is where it needs to take place. So I understand that women being a little more nurturing, social, family-oriented, others-oriented, because we are, that would make sense, because then they take their little like micro-society and apply it to the whole nation.
Yep.
I've found, maybe you guys can confirm or deny as females, that generally the feminine, if a woman complains, she just wants you to listen and understand. Whereas if a man complains, he wants a solution to the problem.
Yep.
I don't know if it's not always every time, but I'm wondering if you guys agree with that, because I found it excessively successful in my relationships.
I think it's a good place to start. I will say again that in my relationship with my husband, I would say literally because he's a good man, he is intuitive and he is very in touch with what's going on emotionally with me and my kids. And so he is more long suffering when it comes to listening. And maybe because I'm really, really busy, I don't have time for the deep emotional rabbit trails that we go down. So I don't know if it's just personality or if it's kind of stage we are in life. I'm so busy that I don't have time for the deep emotional dive. And I personally don't need it. But if you're a guy, I would recommend defaulting with, just listen to her.
Yeah.
And then maybe ask, do you want a solution or do you just want me to hear you out?
Did you guys involve therapy, raising 4 kids and stuff? Like, was there ever like external therapists and stuff that you guys would go to as a family or individuals that helped you?
No. Well, we did do a deep marriage counseling about 4 years ago. Like, most marriages go through a rough spot, and we did. We had like a year or two where I felt more like enemies than friends. You just have to push through that kind of stuff. So we did have to do a very intense marriage week of therapy to like do our realignment, but largely it's been fine. It's been great. Largely it's been great between us and between our kids. In terms of therapy, not therapy, but you've got to read good information. You've got to find other people that are parenting well, that are a few steps ahead of you, because you need that on the ground intel. What did you do for this? When your kid acted this way? How did you talk with them about this? I mean, there are things that you are not going to know unless you see somebody else do it successfully and glean their wisdom so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
How'd you find those people?
At church. Go to church. I'm not kidding.
No,
I don't care.
I'm laughing because it's why we had church for so long.
Correct.
Whether you're religious or not, it's where people come together and your community shares resources, knowledge, information,
values.
And it's been shattered.
That's right. And we say that in our book, our Raising Conservative Kids in a Woke City. The entire last chapter is called Find Your People. Like, you might think that you are the only conservative in Austin or Chicago, but you're not. There are other people that share your values there at church. And you know what? I don't care if you disbelieve that a guy can live for 72 hours in a whale's digestive tract. I get it. Maybe you're skeptical. But do you want other people that are going to fortify you and your children and tell them that they are not crazy for choosing not to wear the mask with the little cutout for your French horn? Go to church. That is where you're going to find those people. So even if you don't believe that the Bible is the divine inspired word of God, you need the people that are at church. Go there. Don't go to a church with a female pastor. Go to a real church.
How come? What's the problem with female pastors?
How much time do you have?
I think we got like 3 minutes before we go to Super Chats.
What? Well, then let's just get this over with. My next book that I'm going to co-author with my husband is called Headship. And it's why God designed there to be headship. That is not domination, control, or chauvinism. It's headship. It's leadership. It's primary responsibility in 2 institutions. And it's not government, and it's not academia, and it's not business. It is the home, and it is the church. Men are supposed to be the heads of those 2 institutions. Why is that? Because those are the 2 institutions responsible for human formation, and men are not optional in the project of human formation. Mm-hmm. And when men are made optional, they leave both the home and the church, and that's what we've been doing.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.